And every decade, we are losing between 3 and 5% of lean muscle mass, unless we are doing something to actively combat that muscle loss. If there is one thing I want everyone to know, it's that muscle goes far beyond aesthetics. At this point, we all know that exercise is important, crucial even, to our overly convenient, often sedentary modern lives. The guideline is typically to move your body in a way that feels good for 30 minutes 5 days a week or 150 minutes per week. And as a dancer, I'm not gonna tell you not to move your body in a way that you enjoy. I mean, our bodies are temporary vessels for our soul's greater expression of experience. But I am going to offer a redirection of our limited energy for exercise to be directed towards one main thing: building muscle. And in this video, I'm telling you why muscle of all things is so important to our aging bodies and minds, and basic guidelines on how to train those muscles most efficiently. And if you're new here, so am I. Thanks for supporting a small creator. My name is Taylor-Leigh, and I love to create videos on things that I'm passionate about, including personal training and building muscle the most effective way we can, mindful living, self-transformation and growth. I'm a mother, a dancer, an artist, a creative, an athlete, just an overall enthusiast for life, and I hope you'll stick around. So from the moment we are conceived, we are aging. We are all continuously developing, growing, and aging throughout our lifespan. But primarily in our 30s and even as early as our late 20s, we start showing more visible signs of aging. We can think about this with our skin, our recovery after drinking, if you're into that. And every decade, we are losing between 3 and 5% of lean muscle mass. And for women, this is accelerated around menopause, unless we are doing something to actively combat that muscle loss. For the purpose of this video, I'm focusing on the physical training. Now, don't be alarmed, this muscle loss is always reversible. And the earlier you start, say in your 20s or 30s, the easier it is to maintain. The muscle fibers that are the most important to continue to build are type 2 muscle fibers. While workouts like Pilates and barre are appealable due to their low impact nature, while promoting things like flexibility and leanness, as well as the promise of being sore for days, thinking that you worked really hard, and you probably did, these workouts are primarily working type 1 muscle fibers, which are more for endurance. Type 1 muscle fibers are the ones that give you that burn after doing a million bazillion reps. And I'm not hating on any of these workouts. If you love them, keep doing them. But consider them as being supplements to your type 2 fiber muscle training. The reason being is that type 2 muscle fibers have a higher threshold, meaning they need continuous stimulation by training muscles close to failure. These type 2 fibers contain something special called satellite cells, which are stem cells located outside of the muscle fiber. After each workout, they activate and contribute towards muscle regeneration and repair, playing a crucial role in our muscle and thus strength growth. We commonly know this as the hypertrophy process. But when satellite cells are not stimulated for long periods of time via resistance training, then 2 negative side effects can result. Number 1 is that the protein in our cells can misfold and interfere with normal cell function. This is known as high proteotoxicity and can lead to neurodegenerative diseases such as Alzheimer's and Parkinson's. The second main side effect that can occur as a result of not providing that stimulation to our muscles and cells via resistance training is mitochondrial dysfunction. This also causes cell damage and leads to neurological problems, metabolic disorders, and the acceleration of aging. Now, don't get me wrong, I am not against aging. I'm not against visible signs of aging, but I think some of them can be slowed down for the sake of our health and well-being. And while we normally associate lifting weights and working out with aesthetic goals, the benefits go way beyond the outer layer. The impact is more inside out. The oxidative stress that comes as a result of not challenging our muscles and our cells enough causes damage, breaking down collagen, which is responsible for skin health and elasticity, joint health, hair and nails, gut lining, and so much more. And while it can be tempting to buy a supplement thinking it'll fix our problems, think about how we can actually create more collagen in our bodies that will actually benefit us way more in the long run. And when we do stay consistent with our training, the stimulation of those satellite cells increases the DNA damage response, leading to better cell cleanup and better health on a cellular level. I have to chuckle at my nerding out of this working out on a cellular level because I remember when my stepson was studying the mitochondria in school, and he didn't think it applied to anything in real life. He didn't know why he needed to learn it. But now that he's into lifting weights, I believe that knowing this information can help us all stay consistent and engaged in our workouts. In addition to cellular health, I recommend prioritizing muscle growth in our workouts because of its incredible impact on metabolism. It's a common misconception that metabolism slows as we age, but the science shows us that we are actually slowly losing muscle mass. Therefore, this impacts metabolism. Metabolism is important because it is responsible for all of the chemical processes in the body that keep us alive. Everything from using food as energy to repairing cells to breathing and digestion. So it is no wonder that metabolic dysfunction has impacts that relate to reproductive health and fertility, diabetes, obesity, hormones, Alzheimer's, and more. Everything is connected, and my partner makes fun of me for saying that everything's connected all the time because it is. So resistance training, muscle and cell growth and repair that was mentioned earlier also ties into metabolism, so let's talk about it. Muscle is a large storage site for glucose. So when we have more muscle mass, this leaves less glucose circulating in the bloodstream, decreasing our blood sugar levels and decreasing the likelihood for storing food as fat mass. Having more lean muscle mass lowers our insulin and increases our body's ability to use this insulin. And when our insulin is lower, then our body is more likely to use fat as fuel than sugar. And when we stimulate those muscle cells through, you guessed it, challenging resistance training, our muscles use these contractions to empty glucose stores, allowing it to be quickly broken down into energy through ATP. Hello, science class. Then the stores in our muscles are ready to be refilled again at our next meal. Now, reproductive health, not just for women, but for men too, is a sign of overall health. And insulin sensitivity and metabolic flexibility, which we want more of, has direct impact on our reproductive health. Now, the body uses metabolic hormones to signal to the brain to control reproductive hormones, but only ensures reproduction happens when energy is sufficient. And by the way, this doesn't just pertain to folks who are looking to get pregnant, but metabolism and blood glucose health also affects other disorders that are related to reproductive health, such as PCOS, endometriosis, menopause, sperm health, ED, and more. So going back to what I said about energy needing to be sufficient to ensure reproductive health, but when energy in the body as a whole is not sufficient enough to maintain that reproductive health, then that's when these disorders can show. I mean, think about it. It's like how we've learned as teens that if you're not getting a period, amenorrhea, then that's probably because you're not getting something that your body needs. Maybe it's a lack of fuel. Maybe it's an increase of stress. Whatever it is, your body has shut down saying, do not give this person a period. They are not fit to reproduce. And I'm not saying that anybody is not fit to reproduce, but there are a lot of layers that go into reproductive health, and muscle metabolism and that cell health that we've been talking about plays a massive role. So if there's anything that you can do, if you're kind of running out of ideas to prioritize this reproductive health, then it's to follow the guidelines that I'm mentioning in this video. So while I can mention things like an increase of stress as your brain and body is focusing on that stress, maybe focusing on past trauma that needs to be excreted from the body and the mind, the spirit, the heart. It can also be a lack of proper fuel, proper nutrition, a lack of fueling yourself with these positive emotions, these positive stressors or lack thereof. This focusing on what you want to create and want to harvest within your life and within yourself and your well-being. But from an exercise standpoint, a lot of us are exercising too intensely with things like boot camp classes and HIIT classes every day, or just this overall mindset that more exercise is better. And this depletes our energy stores, depletes that ability to build muscle. And this is where my exercise guidelines come in. So instead of going hard or going home, what if we redirected our energy in a quieter way? And as I've been mentioning throughout this video, redirecting our energy towards resistance training is key. And for this, I recommend isolating the main muscle groups. Now, I know I've heard people talk about prioritizing compound lifts, and I actually disagree with that because of what science shows us. So when we are doing a compound lift, such as a squat, a deadlift, or any combination move, such as a plank while doing a row at the same time, or a squat to press, we're utilizing multiple muscle groups within our body. Therefore, our energy is being dispersed throughout our whole body, not necessarily towards one main muscle. So to get the best bang for our buck, I recommend isolating muscles. And with each exercise, don't just pick an arbitrary number like 10 reps. I've mentioned challenging the muscle enough to stimulate the satellite cells. And the way that we do this is through lifting to the point of muscle failure. So instead of counting reps, lift to the point that you literally fail or pause in between the rep and cannot do another one. If you're new to this, it may be a little foreign feeling, and you don't have to lift super heavy weights if you don't want to. Pick a weight on a machine or with a dumbbell that allows you to not surpass 30 reps. But if you like lifting heavy and your weight is too heavy to not reach at least 8 reps, maybe 6 to 8 reps, then decrease your rate. So the magic number of reps is between 8 and 30 for muscle growth, ensuring that you are providing enough stimulation to these muscles and thus cells so that they literally cannot do anymore. And do this for 2 to 6 sets per muscle group per week. And if you are brand new to resistance training, you can even do 1 set per muscle group per week. When I kind of was putting all these puzzle pieces together, I was newly postpartum, and before that I did a bunch of functional training, a lot of compound moves and combination moves because I thought that more was better. So when I first started training this way, this new way, this most effective and simple way, I was doing 1 set to failure per muscle group per week, and a lot of these movements were only with body weight. Because when you actually isolate the muscles, you may find that you're actually a lot weaker than you thought you were. At least that was the case for me. And when I was training clients in person, they could lift really heavy on things like squats, RDLs, hip thrusts. But when it came to doing like a single leg, like stand up or single leg step up or hamstring curls, it was like almost impossible to do with only body weights. And this was like a wake-up call, not only for me, but for the clients, that we're missing out in building strength to each individual muscle in our body, which then contributes to overall strength within our bodies. It compounds. So going back to what I was saying about being newly postpartum, I started off lifting this way with 1 set per week, just in my house, just mostly body weight. And I could really feel this kind of like internal strength building. It was unlike anything I had ever felt before. And 1 set was enough for me for a couple weeks. Then I increased to 2 sets per muscle group per week, and then eventually 3 or 4, depending on my goals, how I felt, and also just what I had the time and energy for. Now, another guideline that I have is to find ways of stabilizing your body so that we can really isolate the muscles. This is especially helpful for folks who maybe have an injury they're recovering from, or maybe just overall discomfort around a certain joint. We don't have to do exactly what we see other people doing on the internet or in the gym. We can find ways to adapt our bodies to fit around the exercise rather than trying to fit our bodies into a mold for an exercise that we see or think we should be doing. So for example, instead of doing something like a bent over row, I would do something like a kickstand row, a one-armed row on the ground where 3 of my body parts are stabilized on the floor. So the more support we can find to stabilize us while we're doing an isolated lift, either on a machine or a bench, on the floor or on the wall, then the more energy we can take from the rest of our body and direct it towards the working muscle, thus simplifying and making the exercise more effective for muscle growth. And finally, don't work the same muscle group 2 days in a row. I recommend 48 hours in between working the same muscle group, but I work each muscle group 1 time per week, 3 or 4 sets. So if you want to train glutes twice a week, for example, then if you do them Monday, then don't do them until later on in the week. A lot of times people think that the more often they work a muscle, then the better off it'll be. But actually our muscles grow when they are in recovery. So if our muscle is fatigued from working it the day before, then the less energy we are going to be able to send to the muscle, and it's just not going to be very effective. If these guidelines sound scary or daunting to you, take it from me, who has tried every way of exercising, that directing our short-term energy towards these directed lifts contributes towards overall effective muscle growth to combat this inevitable muscle loss that is gradually happening. And it also puts us more in tune to the feeling state of our bodies. I used to try to do all of my lifts like either balancing on one leg or balancing on a Bosu ball. I just thought that the more muscles I was working, then the harder it would be, and the more effective it would be, the better athlete I would be. And this was really just feeding my ego and making me burnt out in the process. So a note on cardio is that cardio does not have as much of an impact as resistance training, but it is still important. Think of aiming for 150 minutes of moderate cardio per week. Personally, I do this through brisk walks, biking, dancing, running after my toddler, etc. And if you really like HIIT or sit, feel free to throw in like one session of true HIIT, not like the 50-minute class. True HIIT is like 7 or 8 minutes of all-out intensity, just like 1 time per week. Don't overdo it, because it can really overly stress the body, throwing off the body's energy regulation, which is really important for metabolism, which again covers all of the chemical processes in the body. So to recap the benefits of muscle and how we can reap the benefits as we age. The more lean muscle mass we have, the more we are able to keep our metabolism high as we age. Other factors, of course, can include stress, sleep, and calorie intake. And this is why I always have the focused intention of building muscle during my workouts and saving energy for other non-building movement that I still love to do and want to incorporate into my life, such as dancing and yoga asana and hiking and again, running after my toddler, and longboarding and skating and swimming and all those fun things that our bodies can do. I also believe that focusing on muscle has a domino effect in our overall well-being. When our insulin sensitivity improves, our energy improves. We don't have these highs and lows, blood sugar crashes. And when we have more stable energy, we are more active overall. We don't feel the need to just veg out on the couch because we're so exhausted from our workout. We can still go about our daily lives, do the things that we love, care for ourselves and for our families and friends. And when we become more active overall, this improves our cognitive function, our brain health. A better functioning brain creates a more natural motivation to exercise and choose nutrition habits that fuel our energy, that fuel our workouts and our lives. And all of these benefits are heightened through the consistency of routine, because it is really the consistency, the habit, the pattern, and the routine building that keeps us on track, not motivation itself. Motivation comes when we are able to stick to what we've created and what we're focusing on. And a final note is that muscle and strength go hand in hand. The more lean muscle you build, the more strength you build, and vice versa. So long as you're taking those lifts to failure. I used to always think that I had to do a bunch of functional movements to get stronger for everyday life. But now I use those movements like squats as more of a mobility drill than a lifting to failure drill, because it's your body overall energy that is going to quote unquote fail, going to get depleted, rather than one particular muscle group. By all means, if you love squats and you love functional movements, keep doing them. I believe that isolating in the guidelines that I've mentioned are functional in and of themselves, because the strength compounds over the body. And when we're strengthening individual muscles and contributing towards that overall strength, things like balance and posture improve. We don't need separate exercises to work on those things. So if you like the way you work out, keep doing it. If you're looking for something more effective, try incorporating things that I've mentioned. Just try it, see how your body feels. And that's on listening to your body. And one last thought, because I'm sure I'm gonna have some feminine types wondering about being bulky. As you can see, I'm not bulky like a bodybuilder. I mean, I've got the gains, but I would have to be eating a ton and really have a more intense lifting routine to be super buff. So neither training like that or eating like that or being too bulky to like move around and do the movement that I love to do interests me. So I focus on how I feel when I'm taking my lifts to failure at a moderate weight and how I feel on the daily. If you want a more toned look, by the way, that's just a marketing word for certain workouts, then focus on the workout recommendations that I've mentioned in this video and eat to fuel. I hope this video leaves you with encouragement to focus on building muscle, why it's so important beyond aesthetics, and gives you a little motivation to start from wherever you are, at whatever age, whatever ability. It's never too late. We are all aging, and we all deserve to thrive and be cared for, starting with ourselves. Thank you so much for being here. Just start somewhere, start today. Go outside, feel the sun, and I'll see you next time. Bye.